after this month was finished with my zero waste experiment, I learned that it takes a lot more than a month to not create any waste whatsoever. And just like a tiny bit more than a month. But it also just made me reevaluate everything that I did and how I was a person in the world and my values and what I wanted out of life.
Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. I have been speaking to some of my favourite content creators about why they live a zero waste lifestyle and why they believe that others have joined the movement too. We'll also cover some of the reasons why people might not live a zero waste lifestyle. First, let's take a look at the updated definition of zero waste adopted by the Zero Waste International Alliance Board in 2018. The conservation of all resources by means of responsible production, consumption, reuse and recovery of products, packaging and materials without burning and with no discharges to land, water or air that threatens the environment or human health. This is the goal, but how does this translate to an individual living a zero waste lifestyle? How do people discover zero waste and what motivates them to live this lifestyle? There has been much criticism leveled at the likes of Bear Johnson and Lauren Singer, but there is no doubt that their social media friendly version of zero waste lifestyle has certainly brought it to the fringes of the mainstream.
Like I found zero waste through the whole mason jar craze back like 3-4 years ago when everyone was kind of finding it. And I was just like, like that is interesting. You know, like I've never thought about my trash. I've never tried to fit it in a jar. Maybe I could, maybe, I don't know. So I kind of just started playing around with it.
For many like myself, this was merely a starting point, and their journey has evolved far beyond the narrow interpretation of zero waste promoted by Johnson and Singer. I see this as a second wave in the movement, where we are moving towards a much more nuanced and wider perspective.
I think a lot of people fall into this trap of being too focused on the small physical things and less focused on the overall impact our existence has on the planet.
A natural curiosity seems to be the driver behind those who have recognized that there is a bigger picture we need to wrestle with, not just the personal waste that is visible to us.
When you dive into a subject within sustainability, it just, you have some questions that are answered, but then you just create new questions and you just learn new things, and it's a continuous movement of knowledge and information.
It is also about making interconnections within the knowledge that you acquire. So because of this interconnectedness, it would be myopic to speak of zero waste without also mentioning issues such as environmental and social justice.
I just started making these connections and I realized that zero waste is bigger than these individual choices that we're making. It's all about like the way that our culture functions and the way that our society is set up.
When I visited the definition on it, it said something about the conservation of resources and like how it shouldn't affect communities, most especially communities of color that like bear the burden of it. And then I was like, this is an environmental justice issue.
It seems that the more we learn, the more we realize how much is at stake. It's not just about overflowing landfills and plastic in the oceans. This is what drives many to join the movement. Firstly, having their eyes open to how high the stakes are, and secondly, feeling a level of responsibility to do something about it.
A lot of people were uncomfortable when you brought up the conversations regarding race and class. I think this is not because and this is not to shame them. I would say that like it's to kind of bring attention to saying that like, look, we've all have either ignored things or kind of not always made those interconnections, which it's not your fault either. But we do have a responsibility to extend ourselves to learn about environmental justice.
I certainly feel like I have a level of responsibility, especially as someone from the global north with money and resources. It's the least that I can do. Feeling a level of responsibility may propel people into the movement, but this second wave also recognizes that individuals cannot and should not take on the full weight of the responsibility.
I know that obviously like 100 corporations have 70% of the carbon emissions and they are the problem. Like that's, if we fix that, like we'd be much better off. But there's also a lot of strength in taking both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. And so us individuals like bringing our jars is great, and then small businesses making their changes is also great, and we're kind of creating this grassroots culture shift.
From my conversations, it appeared that my friends continued to live a zero-waste lifestyle in part because they had developed a sense of responsibility without feeling overwhelmed or burdened. It is not uncommon for those starting out to have an extremely rigid interpretation of zero waste, which inevitably leads to feelings of failure when you can't live up to these perfectionist expectations.
Me personally, it's a lot about balancing wanting to do truly like make as little waste as possible, and also my mental health and sanity and time. Like, I have a business, I have a life, I have friends, I have family. Like, I can't be running around town to 10 different bulk shops to find the one product. Like, that's what I used to think I had to do. I definitely did that for the first maybe 6 months of zero waste. Like, I have to find this one product in a reusable jar and I can't possibly use anything else. And so there was a lot of unlearning the all or nothing mindset of, I'm doing all the things that I can. I have systems set up in my life where certain things naturally just come zero waste or low waste. And sometimes I mess up and I can't make it happen, and that's totally okay. And so the first barrier for me was just unlearning, because I'm just a perfectionist by nature.
I think that mindset plays an important role in why people choose to live a zero waste lifestyle. I wonder whether those who take a balanced view, who feel like they can make a difference, but aren't plagued by guilt if they forget their reusable cups sometimes, are more able to commit to a zero waste lifestyle in a sustainable way in the long term. I myself went through a period where everything was very black and white in terms of my physical waste. But I realized that if I was in this for the long haul, a zero waste lifestyle needed to empower me as an individual, as opposed to making me feel like a failure. A feeling of empowerment may be one reason as to why people choose to live a zero waste lifestyle. Those I spoke to view the movement as a way for people to have individual agency in the face of what might seem like an insurmountable problem.
This is where individualism plays a huge role in the influence of people, right? Because people are often stressed and kind of unaware of like what to do as the climate crisis is unfolding in their backyards. And so for them, taking action that is most accessible to them.
Maybe you can't stop glaciers from melting or drastically reduce carbon emissions, but you might be able to reuse something you would previously have thrown away. It can provide that feel-good factor because you feel like you are playing your part. As long as you don't fall into the trap of using zero waste as a stick to beat yourself with, these quick wins can also lead to much bigger changes down the line.
There will always be constraints that you have to balance, but if it's just, I call it the zero waste mindset. If you're looking at the world in a way where you're just doing the best you can with what you have, like that's literally all you could ask for.
During these conversations, I found it interesting that no one specifically said that they lived a zero waste lifestyle to do good or because it's the right thing to do. Perhaps it remained unsaid because it is too obvious or may appear too pious, but this is certainly at the core of why I personally live a zero waste lifestyle. Because I believe that it can directly and indirectly have a positive impact on the planet. Only after feeling like it is the right thing to do you discover some of the benefits of living this kind of way. And although the initial investment for some sustainable products is high and inaccessible, I've found that in the long run, I have saved a lot of money. However, when we're thinking about zero waste, it's always important to go back to the core fundamentals of using what you already have, buying these items secondhand where possible, and just simply utilizing the resources that are available to you. Gitameri also noted some positive mental health benefits of her lifestyle because she had become less susceptible to a barrage of ads that we encounter daily.
For me, living sustainably, saying no to things and being calm in that decision made me a better and more assertive person, and did tons of amazing things for my mental health as well.
Before we move on to what the future might hold for the zero waste movement, I want to discuss one final reason why I believe people live a zero waste lifestyle, or at least have made some changes to reduce their waste, and that is social pressure and influence. There is no doubt that sustainability is trendy these days. Just look at Google Trends worldwide data for the phrase since 2014. Although searches for the phrase have been slowly decreasing since the start of the pandemic, in November 2021, searches are still double what they were in 2017. So with this increased interest in zero waste, people may feel like they are stuck in the past or missing out if they don't at least acknowledge the importance of reducing waste, especially young people who may live in an area that is particularly conscious. If everyone is moving to a more sustainable lifestyle, then they will be more likely to emulate this. In Instagram's latest trend report, 23% of Gen Z are expecting to thrift more online through secondhand websites, and about 24% are expecting to contribute more to clothing sustainability by selling their own garments online or on social media. So one of the top hashtag predictions for 2022 is actually sustainable fashion. But being trendy is a double-edged sword. It's great for raising awareness among individuals, but it means that brands are starting to see this as an opportunity to expand their market. And it's, of course, ripe for greenwashing. A 2021 report conducted by the Changing Markets Foundation investigated fashion brands' claims about the sustainability of their products. The report found rampant greenwashing, unsurprisingly, and advised that any unsubstantiated claims will likely have legal repercussions for brands. It should not be up to the consumer to interrogate every single claim made by a brand. There needs to be regulation so that brands are prevented from making unsubstantiated claims about the greenness of their products. Additionally, the nature of the trend cycle is that it moves on fast. So this is why the bigger societal and structural changes are so important, so that zero waste becomes a way of life rather than another social media fad. If you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up as it really supports my channel, and consider sharing this video with a friend if you think that they will find it interesting. Let's also consider why people may not live a zero waste lifestyle. To do this, it's important to make a distinction between the Zero Waste International Alliance's definition and what zero waste has come to be associated with in public consciousness, namely a somewhat superficial aesthetic promoted by privileged white women to feel moral superiority over those who make bad choices. This view may lack a lot of nuance, but it is widespread and risks alienating potential members of our community. It may be one answer to the question, why don't people live a zero waste lifestyle?
If I'm going to use the zero waste term, I have to be really cautious and conscious as to how I use it and what other people associate it with.
Some people may also be put off by the phrase zero waste because it seems unattainable and unrealistic in the modern world.
I'm sure there are so many people out there who are just like so stressed or have been stressed about like the zero and zero waste.
Where we say zero waste, but we don't mean zero waste. It's sort of like the goal rather than the actual practice, I guess.
Even though at its core, zero waste should be affordable because of the way that supermarkets and food sources are set up, it can be more expensive to buy unpackaged. Additionally, the initial investment in some sustainability products can be quite high, even if it works out less expensive in the long run. And if you don't have that money up front, that's a huge barrier. Some people also live in food deserts. We've talked about this before on this channel, and you might have to drive an extra 20 minutes to get to a zero waste shop if you have one in the vicinity. So does it make sense to drive further if you are trying to reduce your impact? Everyone has to decide for themselves what's realistic. Moji also points out that there can be a feeling of judgment from some corners of the movement.
I want to be able to still say zero waste because it's so quick and easy, but like there's so much momentum behind the individual, like if you're not doing it perfect, you're not doing it right energy, that I want to keep shifting that as opposed to throwing the term away.
There always seems to be infighting and judgment around how zero waste someone is, and it just begs the question of why are we arguing with one another? Constructive debates are one thing, but we need to aim our energy at policymakers and big businesses, not denigrating individuals on social media for not being sustainable enough.
I don't like how it forces people to think that there's only one right way to do it, because I don't think there are a lot of other movements or communities that think that way. Like, I don't think a fitness community, like you have to lift weights, like you can run, you can swim, like there are other things that you can do. So I kind of, I wish that we could move towards that more.
I believe that we need to distance ourselves from any prescriptive interpretation of zero waste and what a zero waste lifestyle entails. This lifestyle will look different for every person depending on their geographical location, financial means, and personal capacity. Our movement must actively make space for people as individuals so we can build a community capable of powerful collective action. There is, however, reason to be optimistic about the zero waste community's ability to promote this lifestyle. TR Ramjan, in his paper on the zero waste hashtag on Instagram, concluded, "It seemed that instead of radically confronting dissenting consumers, the zero waste social media activist tends to favor an educational and informational approach. This strategy could potentially prove more effective in the long run, especially in such types of virtual communities." As much as we zero wasters hate to admit it, branding matters, and that goes for social movements as well. I would like to think that in the future, 1, the zero waste movement will not be associated with a specific demographic. We need to see a much more diverse range of representations of a zero waste lifestyle so that no one feels excluded from this community. 2, it will be well known that zero waste practices have been around within Indigenous communities far longer than on social media. And 3, we will continue to open up the phrase zero waste so that it can be used as a talking point without the connotations of perfection. I'd love to continue the discussion in the comments below, so feel free to tell me why you do or don't live a zero waste lifestyle, and what you thought of this video and how you envision the future of the movement. If you'd like to see the full interviews with Moji, Azayas, and Gitameri, they will be on my Patreon. And if you're looking for something to watch next, I highly suggest 100 Zero Waste Swaps or Why is Fast Fashion So Cheap? Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.